Welcome to the Enlightenment Sangha. We're going to begin this evening with a couple of meditations. And in these meditations, I would like for you to focus in your heart. Yeah, let's just keep it in our heart. I want you to try something. I want you to try the first one in the very center of your heart. And the second song, we'll move it up just a little bit higher. Okay? So I'm going to do two songs. And we'll see how this goes for the evening. So, right here. Welcome to the Enlightenment Sangha. This is a most auspicious evening because it is the beginning. Of course, every day is a beginning, actually. But why not have another one? This evening I'm going to be talking about the three jewels in Buddhism. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. In each one of you, you have these three jewels. You have the spiritual, you have the path to the spiritual, and you have your life. But when you come into a spiritual group, I believe this needs to be defined a little bit more clearly. So I'm going to begin with the Buddha. Most Americans think of Buddha as being like Christ or like Mohammed or like any of those other teachers that are avatars. But the Buddha is not that. The Buddha is not a personality. The Buddha, I think, is more closely aligned to what the Yaqui Indians refer to as the Nahual. It is that complete, it's hard to describe because it does not have time or space involved. There is no measurement for it. It cannot be measured. The minute that we start to conceive of it or experience it, we turn it into a creation. We turn it into a reality for ourselves. And this reality may be shared by millions of people, but it is your own personal reality. So the Buddha is your highest spiritual nature. You can name it anything you want. You can name it Christ. You could name it Allah. You could name it anything you want. No matter what you name it, that's not what it is. But it is everywhere. All of creation is inside the Buddha. There's nothing in creation that is not the Buddha. And yet the creation is not all there is of the Buddha because the Buddha is more than its creation. So that's all I'm going to say about the Buddha. You have to figure that out. You figure out your own spiritual awareness. Try to pick the highest and most powerful spiritual experience or concept you can have of God, and just focus on that. That is your Buddha. Whether you want to call it the Holy Spirit or, I don't care what you call it. It is your highest and greatest part of your being. It's not separate from you. You are made of it. You've always been it. It will always be you. There is no ending to it, as there will be no ending to you. We are in a dance of creation. We are the dance of the samsara, experiencing the infinite in a dream of limitation. So, the more we talk about the Buddha, the more confusing it gets. But let's just know it's there. Because even though we can't talk about it, even though we can't measure it, you can still experience it. That's how we know it's there. When you come back from the experience of Buddha nature, you feel holy, you feel sacred, you feel clean. And then you start creating your world. That's the first jewel, the Buddha. The second one is the Sangha, the Dharma, the Dharma. And the Dharma is your path. It is the path that you take going into spirit. Whether at some point, maybe that path was, say, transcendental meditation, you did that and it took you into spirit, then that was your dharmic path. There's a path that we take that leads us into enlightenment, or it leads us up the mountain. We may go it for a while and then we'll find another path that fits us better. And then we may find another path after that that fits us better as we go up this mountain of increased awareness and increased enlightenment. The path is set aside in a spiritual community by the teacher. The teacher sets up the path. And the Sangha are those students or people who align themselves with that teacher and that teacher's path. So it's not for everybody a path is. One size shoe does not fit everyone on earth. It does fit quite a few. But even if you find people that can wear that size shoe, they may not like your style. They may not like your cowboy boot style, or they may not like your tennis shoe style. Maybe they're experiencing sandals or something. So even though you find people that are on the same path or in the same direction, they're not exactly on the same path because there's little things that kind of hone it down to where pretty soon you're just with a fairly select group of people who have bonded together for a while to follow a teacher into that teacher's path to enlightenment. There are many, many teachers and many, many paths. As a matter of fact, each one of you has your own path. You may align with a teacher or with a Sangha for a while, but it's your life. You will live it up until the day you draw your last breath and you leave this all behind. But it is your path. And when you find a group of people who are kind of going the same direction, it's a great gift. It's a boost. I've been teaching for over 30 years in this lineage. I was a teacher before that and other paths, but this has been my path for 30 years. In that 30 years, it began out, in the beginning, it started out with me pretty much doing everything my teacher did. I emulated him perfectly. I was like an actor who was acting out the way that he acted. I talked in the way that he talked. I gestured in the way that he gestured. I walked onto the stage. I practiced walking. He had kind of an interesting walk. I practiced walking that walk. I was really trying to do that path as perfectly and as impeccably as I could. And I did that for 20 years, maybe more. But then after a while, when you're on a path, you start to mature a little bit. And you start becoming more of your own person. You've kind of matured, you've honed in your art, the art of what your path is, until it's pretty clear to you. And now, as you teach, you're not emulating another teacher. You're not trying to be like another teacher. You're not parroting mindlessly sayings and scriptures. Your life becomes the message. So, after 30 years of teaching, I have now, at this very late date, come up with my path. My path is the path of the high heart. My Sangha are the students that follow me on this path. They are the Enlightenment Sangha. There are all kinds of sanghas. Some sanghas really push you in certain directions. Maybe my teacher, for instance, he was really strong in martial arts and in career development. And there was a lot of things that he included. But over 30 years at my age, I've just brought it down to simply enlightenment, because it's really all I'm interested in. And that's all I'm interested in my Sangha doing. It's the Enlightenment Sangha. If you're not interested in enlightenment, then you need not apply, because this is this path, and these are the styles of shoes that we're wearing on this size foot. Okay? But if it fits you in your heart, then you're always welcome here. In this Sangha, we have visitors and friends. And after someone has been a visitor and a friend for a while, and they feel that they're really ready to change their life and to move into the enlightenment phase of their development, then you move into being a student or an apprentice or whatever you want to call it. So we have all these meditations that are open to everyone, to all of our friends and visitors. And this made possible by the apprentices or the students that are part of this Sangha. I've been a teacher most of this life. Before I became a meditation teacher, I was a minister for 7 years. Before that, I was a public school teacher for 7 years. So I've kind of been around this particular way of teaching for a while. But now we're starting fresh. It's a new day. When I was a teacher, when I was a senior at the university, the professor had us go out and do student teaching. And we would have to present to him before we went out to teach a class in the public schools. We'd have to present to him our educational objective. An educational objective is what you can observe the student doing with your eyes or hear them with your ears. You can observe. I suppose if it was cooking, you could observe with your taste. But you can observe them doing something that lets you know they got the body of knowledge, answering 70% of a test, doing a project, working together to create some sort of an event. There are things that you assign your students to do that will develop them in certain areas and let you know when those things are done that they got the lesson. So I have spent some time thinking about the Enlightenment Sangha. And here's my educational objective for all of you. First of all, the first requirement is that you want to become enlightened. It is, after all, the Enlightenment Sangha. It also says that this is important to you. If you become an apprentice or a student, however you want to call it, this has to become the most important thing in your life. It was for me on my path early on when I followed my teacher. That has not changed. This path must be more important to you than anything. And that's a lot to ask. And I realize that many of you have your life, and you have your attachments, and you have things that you need to do and finish. It's part of your karma. I'm not here to say you shouldn't do your karmas. I mean, if you're a parent, you have a karma for your child. That's become part of your path. But if you're in the Enlightenment Sangha, then you take raising the child as part of your enlightenment process. Everything becomes part of the enlightenment process here. So what are the educational objectives that I want to see in my students? I'll go down a list, and I may add to this later on, but these are things to consider. First of all, I want you to understand that if you're part of this Sangha, you are a friend. And everyone in the Sangha is your friend. They're not your enemies. They're not people you compete against. They're not people you measure yourself against. They're your friend. And you are to treat them as you would your best friend. You don't try to change them. You're not always trying to get them to do what you want them to do. You're accepting them the way they are, with all of their flaws. It's not up to you to correct them. It's up to you to love them, to be a friend. And that means a lot. As a friend, you help each other, but you don't enable someone. You don't. We all go through times where we have to be picked up off the ground and maybe carried for a little bit, but you do your best during those times to get your power up, to get your strength up, so that a little later on, when those people who actually picked you up, you can maybe pick them up and help them along. You've got to get your power up so that you can help others and not be a drag. You have to set that as a complete goal, that you are independent, that you're self-sufficient, and you're a friend. We love each other. I've been in sanghas where there was powerful spiritual development, but there was very little love. These are horrible places to be, in my view. I want you to love each other in an unconditional way. Everyone in the Sangha becomes your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, depending on their age. That's how you look at everybody. You respect them. You honor them. Just like you would your mother or your father or your brother or your sister. And if you don't currently do that with your mother, father, brother, or sister, then you need to do that immediately. That's just the way it is. I want people who are aware of the world, who are aware of what's going on in the world. The example I use, which made such an impression on me, about 4 weeks ago, I was walking my little dog, and there was a young lady walking her dog ahead of me on the sidewalk. And she looked down and she saw something and she stopped. She pulled out a little bag and she reached down and she picked up somebody else's dog poop, wrapped it up, carried it away. She gave a damn. She wasn't waving her arms, look at me, I picked up somebody else. No, it wasn't like that at all. She was just doing the right thing. Every action in your life has to be done with integrity, and it's something that we have to work with. We don't get that way right away. It's not easy to give up old patterns of distrust and anger and selfishness and self-righteous judgment. It's hard to give those things up. But those things are not to be exhibited in the Sangha. And if I see someone being self-righteous, selfish, angry, then I will pull them aside and say, what's going on? And they will either change or I'll have them find another Sangha that fits them. We're friends here. We care about each other. We care about other people in the world. We don't judge other people. People are on their own path. Some of them need the teacher they have, whether it's some sort of an evangelical minister who's, preaching fear and damnation. Maybe that's what they need. What do you need? When you come to this place, what do you want? This is a path that is without fear, that does not control, dominate, or manipulate. It's a path of individual development and individual self-reliance. That being said, we still help each other. We do what we can for each other in a very powerful way. And then we move that out into the community. How are you with other people who are in pain? How are you dealing with them? Now, we can't go out and help, feed all the hungry. There's billions of them. But what we can do is come to a peace that goes beyond understanding. A peace within our heart, that we become the light of the world. The young lady came to Christ and said, would you like a drink of water? It was a hot day. And Christ looked at her and he said, I have water that when you drink, you will not thirst again. This is the path of the Dharma. It's not trying to feed everyone who's hungry, although that would be wonderful. It's about getting down to the fact that there's hunger inside of each one of us that needs to be resolved. We care about this planet. We do what we can for it. But we are also under the knowledge that everything is transitory. That the human race, this planet, all of its history, will at some point in time be completely erased. But you will not be. Who you are and what you are and how you develop is an eternal path that goes forever. So here we are together. We've found each other, found some friends to hang out with. We're all different, and yet we work pretty well together. We speak the truth, but not in a hurtful or harmful way. Sometimes the truth does not need to be spoken. You just need to be silent and wait. If the person does not hear the truth, does not want to hear the truth, then you saying the truth will fall on deaf ears. So you wait until there's the opening. And then you come from a place of compassion and wisdom. The Sangha is centered around the teacher, whoever that teacher is. When you become part of a Sangha, you're saying, I'm committing for a while to this path. I like where the teacher is, I like where that teacher is going, and I want to be part of it. I want to align my life with that. As a teacher, it is my job to overlook the Sangha, to make sure that everybody is doing okay. People will always be going through changes. When you're in a spiritual community, there will be changes in your life. And these changes may be very dramatic and sometimes very frightening. These changes may make some people angry because that's how some people react when it comes to massive change. There's always going to be something going on. The rug is always going to be pulled out from underneath your feet. So you get nimble with yourself. You hang on, but you hang on lightly. The world is shaking and changing and moving under your feet, and yet you keep your vision just where it needs to be. You're balanced up as you move forward. And when things move, you've learned to adjust to that movement. So we work together and we recognize that the people in our Sangha are going into enlightenment. The things that are keeping them from enlightenment are being taken away or challenged, or they're having to redefine their life. And that's kind of a problem. People get unhappy with that. I understand. But there's never an excuse, ever an excuse for being mean or for expressing anger toward anyone. It's not accepted. You can't be mean. You can't be selfish. You can't go around trying to control others. That's a recipe for disaster and great heartache. Life is a flow. It's just a flow. So being part of an Enlightenment Sangha is a beautiful, beautiful experience. But that doesn't mean there won't be times when it'll be a little challenging for you. And that's why you have me. I'm very available to my students. I'm actually available to people who aren't my students. I meet with people on the internet all the time that aren't my students. And I do what I can to help them. Why not? It's what I do. I also believe, as a teacher, that we should have adventures. I love adventures. Usually that involves travel, which means you have to get your money up. You know, I'm going to Machu Picchu in September. All of you invited. If you want to come along, let us know. Time is getting short. But Machu Picchu has been on my bucket list since I was in second grade. This is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime trip. There will not be another time you will ever go there with me. So it's an adventure, and these things cost money. And we don't do it on the cheap. Instead of taking a 7-hour bus ride, we're taking a little plane hop over. Costs more money. But I think I'd rather do that than bounce around in a bus for 6 or 7 hours. We want to do things correctly, with compassion. So Machu Picchu in the fall, possibly India in the spring for a couple of weeks. These things are going to cost $3,000–$4,000 an adventure, which means that as an individual, you have to work on your occupation, on your job. You have to set your intention, all the things that you need to do to rise up and be able to be part of the adventures. If you don't go, you don't go. You just don't have the adventure. But as I said, I'm only going to Machu Picchu once. And I'm probably only going to go to India once. And who knows what comes after that. So we need to get your career up, whatever it takes to get your career up so that you can go and attend these events without hitting your credit card, without putting yourself into a tremendous amount of debt. This is our goal. We want to have fun with each. That's what you do with friends. You have fun, right? It's my Sangha. And I'll cry if I want to. Oh, I'm sorry, it's an old song. It's a song that was before most of you were born. Vishnu gets it. But, you know, I can do anything I want. It's enlightenment, right? And I decide, who do I want around me? I want people who are happy. I want people who care about each other. I want people who love and who care about this planet. I want people who love and care about people who believe completely different than they do. This is the path of the high heart. The heart has 3 areas. Low heart, which is romantic heart. It's beautiful. I love romance. Oh, the candles, the wine, touching, kissing. It's so fun. And then you have, of course, because it is conditional, you get to work on your issues, you know. So you're with a partner and they don't like the way, maybe the way you cut your hair, and so, I like my hair, no you don't, and so you have these conflicts until you turn around and you resolve the conflicts, and then your relationship is back together and you have, you know, I guess make-up sex or whatever, and then you keep going. So this kind of relationship is a very good learning tool because it shows you things in your life that you wouldn't normally look at. You always have somebody pointing out your flaw, and you're always pointing out their flaws. Because that's what happens in conditional love. It has conditions, remember that. I'll love you as long as you don't beat me, or as long as you don't get drunk and spend all of our cash, or as long as, you know, fill in the blank. I'm not saying this is bad love. It's samsaric love. It's in the samsara. Then you have the mid-heart, which is guru heart. Grandmother heart. It still has a little bit of multiplicity. There's still a little bit of judgment in the guru heart. You will always love somebody. I've lived in the guru heart now for 30 years. I cannot not love somebody. It just doesn't happen. There's nobody I've met in the last 30 years that I don't love. Many of them don't love me. Some of them actually hate me. But I never, ever stopped loving. I can't. I'm in Guru heart. But in Guru heart, even though you can't stop loving, you always want them to improve. You know, Jimmy, I love you, but I want you to quit torturing all the cats in the neighborhood. That's not good. Or setting fires to, you know, the neighbor's hen house or whatever. It's a love that certainly has certain limitations to it, in that you want them to improve. But this is the path of the high heart. And you find the high heart by putting your hand right here on your collarbone like that. And where your palm is high heart. And this is complete unconditional love. Now this is interesting, because when you are in this space, if you're truly in it, it's jnana yoga. There is no emotion. There are no limits. Events, people, things do not have to change. It's unconditional. Unconditional. So, you said, what does this mean? How does this work? Well, I'm going along and suddenly there's this terrible demonic poltergeist with dragons, and it's all, there it is. And it's very frightening and very yucky energy. It's like tar black. It's really, 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 really bad energy. Fear, terror, anger, you name it. There it is. So the practitioner of the high heart says, so. And they look at it. They don't run from it. You don't run toward it. You face it directly, and you pull all of that horrible, demonic, whatever energy, satanic, whatever. You pull it into the high heart. Not the lower or the bottom one. That's a bad mistake. But you pull it into the high heart, where there's nothing but unconditional love. It cannot harm you there, because it has no barriers. It has nothing for that energy to stick to. That energy is only there because you believe in duality. But in the high heart, there is no duality. There's nothing for it to grab. There's nothing for it to attack. It is unconditional love. It is the love that is the basic building block, the basic nature of the entire universe. There's nothing in creation that is not that. So you pull this terror, these terrible feelings, these awful things right into your high heart. You breathe them in. And then in the space where that was, you breathe out unconditional love. And as you breathe it out, it doesn't feel like romantic love. It doesn't feel like guru love. As a matter of fact, it probably doesn't feel like love at all to you. But with the intention and the focus of having your attention right here in the high heart, you fill that space with love. I test myself with this. There are people I don't agree with. Thousands of people agree with them. Maybe millions, but I don't. So there's this commentator on national news that I find interesting. And that all he's interested in is hatred. All he's interested in is division. All he's interested in is basically low vibe stuff. I can't hardly watch his show. I watch it for like 10 seconds, I have to cut it off. It's just, eh. So I took him and all of his energy, and I did this. The energy's gone. I'm not wanting, I don't need him to change. This may not change anything outside of me. They may not change at all. There's no conditions here, remember? I can't breathe it in and breathe out love and everything's going to suddenly get better. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to breathe that energy out so that in the future, when you hit that, you just automatically push out unconditional love. Unconditional means they don't have to change. But it means that you have changed. That you have come up to a point of peace that goes beyond understanding, with a love that has no barriers. And that's the path of the high heart. In this path, or in any Sangha whatsoever, once you find your teacher, once you find a teacher that you want to really work with, you really want to be with that teacher, then you create a heart connection with that teacher that's like a fiber optic. It is so clear, so pure. And if anything comes up, somebody comes up and they start to trash your teacher, they start to go against your teacher, he's a great guy, but, or he's a great guy, however, or did you hear this about him? Anytime you hear things like that, close it off. You don't want something to come between you and your teacher. And if something comes between you and your teacher, you have to clean it up. I did this constantly with my teacher. He was notorious. I was always having to clean up my connection with him, because that connection took me into light. That connection took me right into spiritual awakening. So there's a lot of respect that you need to have for a teacher. Tremendous respect. So that's that. If the teacher makes a recommendation to read a book, or to polish up your resume, or to take a class, or to whatever, then it is your responsibility to take that to heart. To really try to see what the teacher saw, why the teacher is making you do that or asking you to do that. In other words, you're not always arm wrestling with the teacher about everything the teacher says. You bring it into your heart and you say, how is this? Is that really inside of me? If you look deep enough, you'll probably see it is. So you keep highest respect, the highest respect of all, the holiest, the sacredness, the most beautiful is the Buddha. Second to that is your teacher, who sets up the path of Dharma that takes you to the Buddha. The teacher becomes your point of access into the Buddha, into liberation. So that has to be really respected. In America, we're not taught that. We're taught to make fun of teachers, but This is, in this Sangha, respect. Respect for the teacher, respect for our fellow Sangha members, respect for the world. We support the Dharma. The teacher is the outpicturing of your view of enlightenment. I had students for years who were perfectly happy, and I didn't mind, but they were perfectly happy to have me drive around in an old car. I drove a Geo Metro for years. I loved it, actually. It's a nice little car. But they were fine with that. How do you want to treat enlightenment? How do you want enlightenment to look to you? And it's the personification of your teacher. How your teacher gets along in life. You know, I'm very simple. Please don't get me a Rolls Royce. I would have to make it into a camper or something. But my needs are simple. But how you treat a teacher is how you are treating enlightenment. So that's why you have to keep your connection with your teacher very clean. If you have doubts, if you have angers, then you sit and you work with your teacher until you polish up that optic fiber so that it's clean again. So, Enlightenment Sangha, Enlightenment Path of Dharma, Enlightenment. Great. So I'd like for us to finish this with a meditation, one song. And this one I'd like you to just gaze up here for a while I meditate. Go ahead. let's go with the second one. That's good. Take a breath. Relax. Give me a moment. Good. Good. So, I've done a lot of talking. What I would like now is to have, answer any questions you may have. And it can be any question. It comes from your heart. Yes.
And I have asked this over and over again. But what exactly is enlightenment? Is it like Rama, who lived in different worlds of reality? Is it knowledge?
What is enlightenment? Boy. Here I open up for questions and I get the hardest one of all. It's a great question. What is enlightenment? People have all kinds of ideas about enlightenment. So understand this is my path, this is Dharma, this is my view, probably not shared by anyone else, okay? And I'm perfectly okay with that. Enlightenment is having an interface while you still have a body, while you still have a life, still have language and society and all these things that are going on. But the more you become aware of the Buddha nature, the more you become aware of that unconditional, unmanifest, beautiful, it's beyond words. Just because you can't talk about it doesn't mean it's not. Wow. And even that's short. So, how do we bring that unmanifest, that creative energy, that beautiful essence of unconditional love down into our life, all the way to the lowest part of our consciousness, and awaken to that light a little bit in each one of those areas. The first part, boy, here's something you can put on a t-shirt. Life is nothing but potty training. That's all it is. We go around just taking a random shit anywhere we want, stinking up the environment with our attitudes and with our beliefs and all this other stuff. And we're just having shit all around us. My teacher used to call us an asshole. I thought about that a lot. You know, an asshole, what comes out of an asshole? You know, toxic waste, noxious gases. If all you can see around you is toxic waste and noxic gases and filth, then you're probably an asshole. And you need to move your attention somewhere else. Wherever you place your attention is what you tend to become. So the first thing when you're potty training, I'll go into my own potty training because I can actually remember it. I was just letting my body do its thing. My body would have a bowel movement and do it. But as the months went on, I started identifying more as being a little boy and, you know, looking at my brothers. I started noticing after a while that they didn't wear diapers. That they went to the bathroom with the big people. And I had diapers. So that's the first step, to recognize that you need to get a hold of something. You need to start controlling something. And then you start paying attention to your body a little bit, and, you know, and it start to let you know, you kind of got a little glimpse of it. And then my mother, when she saw it was that I was starting to become interested in this, I think I was about 9, maybe 10 months old, I don't know. Not important. She would feed me, and then about 20 minutes later, she'd put me on the pot. Give me a cookie, and I'd sit there. And pretty soon, there it went. Wow, and everybody's waving their arms. Oh, good boy, what a great, you didn't, you're a big boy now. And then, 2 hours later, I'm pooping my pants again. It didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of time of me becoming aware that I wanted to make the change and that I had to start getting control of myself in certain ways. And then when those feelings came up to actually control and not let them just do what they wanted to do, I became in control of my bowels, and I became potty trained. This took a while, but now I'm potty trained. Enlightenment. Potty training. Yeah. You just quit having a nasty attitude. You quit being fearful. In enlightenment, there is no fear. There is no anger. There's only compassion and love. Now, sometimes it doesn't look like it. My mother loved me as only a mother can love a child. And I would misbehave, and sometimes she would say, get the switch. Back in the day, we go out and we'd pick up a little stick, and she'd spank us on the leg a little bit till we cried. Oh, I didn't want that. And she would say, this is going to hurt me worse than it does you. I didn't believe her, but now I do. I knew that it hurt her more than it did me because I had to be corrected. I was doing something that was really not right. And it didn't feel right. It felt pretty awful. It was humiliating. It was terrible. But it had to be done. So it's not always happy, happy, smooth, smooth. Sometimes it can make kind of a tough appearance. But as a parent, as you know as a parent, that when you really do the disciplining of your children right, it hurts you more than it does them. It's never a fun thing. If you ever discipline a child and you have the attitude, little son of a bitch is going to get what's coming to him, then you have now become a child abuser. It should never be satisfying to correct a child, but it has to be done. It's never satisfying for a teacher to correct a student, but it has to be done because you have certain qualities that you're going through life with, and if you don't change those qualities, you will not change. And if you don't change, you're not going into enlightenment. I'm not one of these teachers that sits over and yells at you all the time. I really don't like yelling. And if I find somebody that's always having me yell at them, I'd probably end up sending them to another teacher because something's not working here. This is an enlightenment of friends, of respect, of honor. Holding the spiritual nature as part of our sacredness. So to me, an enlightened teacher is someone who has potty trained themselves, and they are now moving into an awareness of their higher nature that is more than anyone else around them. There are lots of enlightened teachers around now, but these are people who are extraordinary. They've worked on their lives. I have worked on myself since my first spiritual awakening at the age of 5. So I have been working on this thing 66 years. And I'm still working on it. My biggest challenges come from my students, because I'm always having to correct them. Not always. I have a great bunch of students right now, so corrections are rare. But I do make a couple. But it's only because of love. Any teacher that teaches with their heart closed, or they feel like they have to protect their heart to teach, they're not a teacher. I said earlier, I love everyone that I've ever sat with. I cannot help it. I cannot stop it. No matter how they hate me or trash me, I cannot stop loving them. Or will I ever? First step to enlightenment. Second step, surrender completely to the light. You have no dignity. If enlightenment comes and tells you to strip off naked and run around with an ostrich feather in your hair, then you do it. It doesn't matter whatever enlightenment tells you to do, but you know it's enlightenment because it's coming from a space of complete dissolution of the self, a place where you have moved and everything in your being has been dissolved into the light, and there's no you, there's no thought, there's no nothing except light. Perfection. Holy. Sacred. High heart. I told you earlier about dealing with demons with high heart. The members of this Sangha will walk around all day long, breathing in the world, and with every breath, breathing out unconditional love. Whether they pass the homeless, the law enforcement, doesn't matter. We don't need to change that. We need to change us. There will never, ever be peace outside of you, world peace outside of you, until you find world peace in you. And the only way you can find world peace in you is to take all of these negative thoughts, all of these things that are just terrorizing your life, and just breathing it in to your highest nature and breathing out the highest nature, which doesn't, by the way, feel like love. You're used to this conditional stuff that's very emotional. This is not emotional at all. This is jnana yoga. This is I change. Enlightenment. I don't try to change others. I try to change me. As I change me, remember the first lesson, what you touch touches you? As I change me, whoever touches me touches that also. We're not separate from each other. There's only one. There's just one. Not two. That's the dream. There's just one. It's nothing you attain. Attain means that there's here and there's there. No, there's just the Buddha. There's just what you could call it Christ. There's whatever you want to call it, but that's that. Your highest spiritual nature manifesting all around you in a cacophony of chaos. And you sit in the middle of that. You are standing on the water in a raging storm, and you are peace. This is not something we get overnight in the Sangha. You have to work this. This is the Dharma that I'm teaching. This is my path. It may not be your path. If it doesn't ring with you, if it doesn't resonate with you, if you try it and it just, then go away. There's other people, other teachers. Don't be distracted by this. If it doesn't fit you, don't do it. But if you find that you're kind of resonating with it, then we'll work. Potty training takes a while. It takes a while before you can go the entire day. Doing your job, as a nurse, or as a computer programmer, or as a martial artist, or in your construction, whatever you do, in your science, or whatever you're doing, it takes a while to come to this way of doing things, and it turns you into a true Buddhist monk. And that's a pretty good place to be. So as you become, the more you become the light in a dark world, then obviously the more enlightened you are, right? Because you're putting out light where used to there was just darkness. When before you walked into a room and it was full of anger or outrage, and you would just get caught up in it and tell people to shut up and settle down. Instead, now you just come in and you take and you say nothing. You do nothing because you have become nothing. You have become enlightened. Did that even come close to answering your question? It helped. Good. That's a tough one because we have expectations about enlightenment. It's used so much. Yeah, I just think it has to do with how much light you're bringing into your world. We're so busy bringing light out there to others, it really is inside of us. Any other questions? That's a good one. Yeah. Yes?
During when we're meditating, when you want us to focus on the heart, would it be the upper heart, the idea, or any of them?
Usually when I ask you to meditate on the heart, just go to the center of it. Or if you want, go to the high heart. The low heart, you're there all the time. You don't need to worry about that one. But when I ask you to meditate on your heart, you're either the high heart or the guru heart, where you just love. Mainly yourself. Yes? Anyone else? Yes?
Are we allowed to ask about that dream of yours?
Yes, you can. I mentioned that I had dreamt about this evening. It's very difficult for me to distinguish between dreams and visions because I'm a lucid dreamer. And when you're a lucid dreamer, I can't tell the difference between dreaming and visions. They're just things that are a possibility. What I saw and what we always see in our visions is we see a possibility. We see a possible outcome. And in my vision, which so far I think I'm doing all right, but not as clear as it was in my vision, was the idea of beginning a real foundational description of the Enlightenment Sangha, a description of the dharmic path that I'm going on, and an idea of what I consider God or spiritual stuff and how we get there. So I laid out what a Sangha is and how I want people to react. I have been in Sanghas where people did not care for each other, where they competed with each other, where they weren't friends at all. So I've determined that my Sangha is not going to have that element. This is an element of high heart. But it is a path of the heart. And in my view, and this is just my view, this is the size shoe I'm wearing and the size style I'm wearing, in my view, if you don't have heart, you have nothing. You can move mountains, you can do all kinds of siddhas, you can impress the hell out of people with your knowledge, but if you don't have heart, you're just wasting everybody's time. You're on nothing but a supreme ego trip of look at me, look how advanced I am, look, I can do this power, I can do that power. If you're into that, which I, by the way, in full disclosure, was into that for 20 years of my teaching. It's a real trap, okay? But that can't be it. It's got to be the heart. You've got to love people. You've got to love everything. It's all God. How can you not love God? You say, well, God's in Fox News. How can I love Fox News? You've got to. Just drop your judgment. I don't know. Did that answer your, I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your questions. One or two more? Anyone? Yes?
Just to learn more about the higher heart you describe in the subtle physical body, would you say it's like a layer of the heart chakra, or is like a different chakra up in that part of the body?
Yeah. The chakras are really interesting because they don't have a boundary. It's blurred as you come up. But there are certain areas where it's centered, and the heart is centered right here. It covers a pretty good area, right? And I, until recently, never really explored the heart that much. But when I started looking into the heart and I saw the 3 layers of love, the 3 layers of how we express the divine nature of the universe, in the samsara, which is from the mid-heart down, everything is conditional. It's full of conflict. It's full of control, domination, manipulation, fear. It's an interesting spot to be. When you get up into the mid-heart, and I saw this, I said, wow, look at that. In the mid-heart, you still love everybody, but you want them to get better. And then I saw, oh, well, that's the guru heart, somebody told me. But it wasn't until the last couple of months, really, that as I meditated on my high heart, I always went from my mid-heart up to my throat, but I have found that this is an opening here. This is such a powerful, powerful realization that if this is your path and you practice this, it will absolutely take you into enlightenment. I do believe that. But it's not something you're going to get overnight. We have to work on these things. You know, 2 steps forward, sometimes 3 steps back, but you just keep moving ahead. Potty training isn't easy. And that's when we have each other. But really, it's up to you individually. And I invite you to try this on your own. Pick out something small, something that irritates you, it's always irritating you, and then just bring it in and breathe on it until the energy is gone. The irritation is gone. It will still happen, but you're not reacting that way anymore. And then you move that into other areas of your life. Slowly. This is not a race. This is not something you have to do this week. This is something you will do the rest of your life. So just realize that that's what we're going to do. It's a path. You will do it until there is no more you. So, it probably scared some people off. No more me. What about me? One more question, anyone? One more? Any comments? Okay, we're going to have our last meditation. If you'd like to be on our mailing list, just email our Sangha. Namaste.